the second part of our series here about doing backups of your data, making sure you've always got multiple copies of your data. We wanted to show off a little tool here that we've got, which is made by us. It's called QuDedup. So this is a bit like data deduplication that you'd normally find on a higher end or more enterprise product, such as our QUTS Hero series. NAS, they get data deduplication built in because of the ZFS file system. Here we're able to do it across most of our NAS simply by using the HBS or Hybrid Backup Sync 3 software. So as I scroll down the page here, you can sort of see how it works. So without QuDedup, it's going to copy like for like absolutely everything that's at the source to the destination, even if it's the same file. So you see here the 3 purple squares on the left, it's going to copy the same 3 purple squares over. But when you look over here, when you've got it with QuDedup, the 3 purple and the 3 blue on the left and the 3 purple, it's only going to copy one of each across there. So it's going to be able to save a lot of space on the backup target. This is especially important if your backup drive is perhaps not much bigger than your main NAS, especially if you're keeping multiple versions. Typically the backup drive will often have more data on it than the source because of the versioning. But also if you were using it to a cloud destination, if they charge you per gigabyte, this could save you a lot of money in subscription fees from them for the capacity if you're able to reduce it with a lot of duplicated data that you may have. So on this one, as with the last video, I'm using the TS251D here. A little different this time, so I've got a separate folder now called QuDedup that I've just filled up with loads of old price books that we've got, presentation files, PDFs, all sorts of things in here. So there's 207 files in there. There's a little bit of duplication between some of the data within the files, especially things like the price books. You know, we generally release a new price book, a lot of the data will be the same, but it's just text and these are small files, so I'm not expecting a lot from QuDedup in terms of the ratio here, but this is to illustrate that it can reduce the space used. So the first thing you want to do is open up HBS 3, Hybrid Backup Sync 3, and we're going to create a backup job. So if I click backup now, I'm going to say I want to do a new backup job. One thing you'll see here is it's got an external device connected. For this one, instead of going NAS to NAS, I'm going to go to an external drive. If I click up here, it'll show me the external drive that I'm using, which is a 1 terabyte iStorage DiskAssure Pro drive. So it's one of those ones that's got the security keypad on the front. So I've obviously already entered in that code so that it's able to connect me here. So the source file, so it's here, it's asking select the source folders. I'm going to choose the QuDedup folder because that's got all the data in that I want to back up. So I'm going to click next. This time I'm going to choose local NAS because the USB drive is attached to the local NAS. I'm going to click select. Now it's wanting to know the destination folder. So I see here in the list I've got the external devices. I've got the DiskAssure device from iStorage. So here I'm going to create a new folder. So here I'll call it something like QuDedup. I'll click plus. So now I've got a folder here called QuDedup. So here if I click OK on that one, I'm now sending data from the QuDedup folder on the NAS over to the QuDedup folder on the USB attached drive that I've got attached. So it's saying the total size is about 656 megs, not a huge amount, 209 files. So I'm going to name the job so I know what it is. So put QuDedup that, click next. Schedule, I'm not going to set a schedule for this, but of course you can set it to anything you want, but I am going to choose the backup now option. There's different things here you can do like version management or data integrity check. One thing I will say is you cannot change the version management settings once you have a QuDedup job set up. So make sure you get the version management right because you can't go and change these settings later if you wanted to use them. So I'll click next. And I can see QuDedup is ticked. So if we hover over that, it says it will affect version management. So it's letting you know that you can't change the version management settings after you create the job. You can set any policies and options that you may want to use here. I'll just leave it fairly default with the QuDedup option enabled, and I'll click next. And then I'll click create. And because I ticked the backup now option, it should go off and immediately start backing up, which it is. And because it's a small amount of data, I expect this to finish pretty quickly here, just because it's not even a gigabyte of data that we're sending across here. So we'll just wait for that to finish. There we go. So that just took a couple of seconds. So we've got a successful backup done. So if I go to check the report now, this is where the useful information comes, so you can see how successful QuDedup has been in reducing the data rate. So as you saw here, none of my files are duplicated. I could of course just put a load of copies of the same file there and it would have absolutely saved a lot more, but here it's showing a data reduction rate of 1.08. The higher that number is, the more it was effective to the type of data that you've got. So if you had a lot of duplicates, you'd see a much higher number there. For example, if I'm backing up my ISO folders, virtual machine folders, things like that, the data reduction rate I get there might be as high as 50, 60, something like that usually. So it's going to show you a much more higher number with different types of data. So I can close those out. Now there's a couple of ways to access the footage. I'll show you the sort of more basic way. So the way QuDedup works is it effectively puts all the data in a QDFF file. So if I go look at the disk assure option here in File Station, I can go into the QuDedup folder where I sent the backup job, and all I see in there is a single file, which is the QDFF. Now I can click that and it'll let me look inside it, but it's kind of full of a lot of stuff that does not represent what the folder looked like. None of the Excel files, PowerPoints, PDFs that I had, none of them are there. As I click through all these different folders, you won't see anything in there that you would recognize, just a lot of sort of reference names for the backup job, if you like. So one thing you can do is you can look at the data that's in that from here. So you can right click on the QDFF option there. You've got an option to restore with HBS, a hybrid backup sync. So you can do a restore job from the backup. It realizes it's a backup. If you just want to look in and quickly just pull one file out, there is an option down here to mount the QuDedup folder. So if I call it QuDedup-test, for example, it's going to mount it. So here we've got the QuDedup test folder. Now I can click inside that and now it's going to look exactly like the folder did. So all of the different items that I had before, they're there. I can now sort of highlight it. I can copy it, put it back in a different folder on the NAS if I want to. I can pull that data around. So you can use it as you need to use it. Once you're finished, you can just simply unmount the test folder and it's going to unmount that QuDedup folder, so it's no longer going to appear there. So that's how I've got it set up on the NAS itself. Now if you wanted to access this data, because I have put it on one of the iStorage drives where I could unplug it from the NAS and I could go take it somewhere else. I could go connect it to a computer, Windows or Mac, for example. We do have a tool for both Windows and Mac that's going to let you access the data on those on that QDFF file as well. So here, if I switch over, I've got a Windows 11 virtual machine running here. And on this machine, I do have a copy of the QuDedup Extract Tool. So it just simply wants you to browse to a file. Incidentally, here is what the Mac version looks like. Let's drag that in. It looks exactly the same. It just says at the top for Windows and for Mac, same software for both. But here with the demo with the Windows setup, if I click Browse File, I just need to browse to the NAS in this case because I've still got the drive attached to the NAS. I'll click on Network, but if you were to unplug that drive and connected it to the Windows machine, it would be a local drive that's attached. I'm going to click on the TS251D. I'm going to go to the Azure drive because that's where the QDFF file is, and go to the QuDedup folder, and I see the QDFF file. So now if I select that, it's going to open it up in exactly the same way the NAS was able to see it. So I can now go through and I can double click. I can see all the files and folders. Currently it's showing just 50 items at a time. I could change this up to 500 to see all files in one scrollable list. Anytime I want to access one of those files, I can tick one, tick multiple, and I can choose the extract option, and it'll pull it out so that it's in a format that I can now read again on the machine that I've connected to. So should the NAS fail for whatever reason, be lost, you're able to use that backup drive. You can still recover the data even if you don't have a QNAP to plug it into. So this tool here is completely free, the QuDedup Extract tool. Again, we've got it for Windows, Mac, and there's a Linux version for it as well. But you can also look in the QDFF file directly on the NAS as well. So that's our QuDedup application. If anybody has any questions about that, it's just a really good way to save space, especially if you've got a lot of duplicated data, especially on your NAS, and you're sending it to somewhere that's a bit more space sensitive. So in my example here, I've got a NAS with potentially much more capacity than a single attached drive. But with the iStorage 1 terabyte here, I'm able to fit quite a lot on there, especially if I've got let's say 1.5 terabytes of duplicated data on my NAS, it may well fit if it's getting a high deduplication rate to the backup job through QuDedup there. So if anybody has any questions, leave it in the comments section down below and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks very much. Bye.